Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of the Construction Cogs Podcast. We've got a special guest here. We have a former paratrooper, a former world champion in taekwondo, ex-mobile crane operator, appointed person, and prime Scottish 6'7" of lifting expertise, Kevin Bennison. How are we doing, Kev? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Jim. Yeah, what an intro. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And just to clarify, I'm just average height, Jim. Everybody else is below average.
Yeah.
You've been doing your research, mate.
Yeah, how many times have you used that line before?
It didn't sound well pedalled out. Yeah, once or twice.
No, but thanks very much. It really means a lot to me when people take time out of their schedules to come and chat to me. So thanks for this, mate. Really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I've got to admit though, only up until a few weeks ago, I didn't know who you were, to be honest, sir. So I kept hearing your name pop up, and a couple of people said, "No, you've got to get Kevin Bennison on your podcast. It'd be really great." So I thought, I've got to find out who this geezer is. So let's look him up. And then, as it turned out, I'd actually watched one of your videos on mode factors for research for one of my articles and videos myself.
Okay.
I was like, here we go, here he is. So you helped me out actually without knowing it. So thanks for that as well.
Good. That was always a good thing.
I'm sure you know how these things work. I'm sure you've done enough of these now. Let's go back to how you got into the crane industry. Actually, let's go back a little bit further. Let's find out who you were before that and what sort of character you was.
Oh, goodness me, what kind of character I was. A little bit rebellious, I suppose. Always been pretty curious, Jim, interested in, I suppose, the world, interested in why things happen, interested in the reason we do things. I've always had that sort of interest. It got me into bother at times. I certainly wouldn't say I'd done particularly well at school. So I was starting off with that, much like many people in the industry. I've managed to learn a lot since then, but, the way I was at school and the way how I see other people, how they've got on at school, it certainly absolutely makes it clear in my mind that as much as sometimes school tries to define us as people and our level of intelligence, it's absolutely not accurate. It's helpful, it's a tool, and it can be helpful to many people if you want to go on that academic road, but that certainly didn't work for me. And there's some incredible and intelligent people who don't do particularly well at school and then go on to do good things, really good things. But there's a lot of people I've had come through the doors for training, and actually they could be in their 50s and they're still kind of using what the messages they got at school as part of their identity, and it limits them. They'll be telling themselves things like, "I've never been any good at maths," and these sort of things. They're limiting their options by these stories they were told when they were younger at school. So I left school at 16. I had a couple of years as a joiner. That didn't really work out because I found out I was a bit crap at it, really. That's the honest truth. And I wasn't overly into it. I'd thought about joining the army when I was 16, but got into the joinery and thought, well, I had people tell me, get a trade to fall back on. So that's what I tried to do. But I'd done half my apprenticeship as a joiner. The guy I was working for, he basically went broke, so we all got paid off, and I was like, what do I do now? So then I decided, okay, I'll go and join the army. So I got in the Royal Engineers, went through training and got my plant operator qualifications, and then for some crazy reason, I decided to go and become a paratrooper. So in the Royal Engineers, there's a squadron within there. It's a bit broader than that now. They've increased it since then, but there was a dedicated parachute squadron within the Royal Engineers. So you had to do the All Arms P Company course and then do your jumps course. And I thought I was afraid of heights before then, to be honest, Jim, but I went and done the physical course, which was pretty damn hard, some soul searching times on that, got through it. And then I went and jumped out of airplanes, and that was like, well, yeah, it just kind of demonstrated to me that when there's something that you're afraid of, okay, there's some things that are pretty good to be afraid of. You know, it's pretty good to have a bit of a fear of falling and things like that, and that tends to stop you a little bit of healthy fear. But some of the things that are holding people back, actually, when you go and push through it, you build confidence in that, and you realize it's not as bad as what you were considering in your mind. So that was a big lesson for me. So yeah, I spent a few years in the army. And of course, as I say, I was on earth moving plant in there. I was operating mainly JCB 3CXs in the military. I was out in Kosovo. We were out there to start the peace process in 1999, which was an interesting experience. And then I left the army in 2000, mainly to start a family. And that was when I had a few months on earth moving plant when I left the army, but I just wasn't really enjoying it, Jim, you know. And I knew a few people that were on the cranes, and somebody had already said, you know, if you want to start, I can get you a job. It was like, so a few months after leaving the army, I went back to him and says, is that offer still open? He said, yeah, I'll get it sorted. So I then started and got my crane ticket with Hewden Crane Hire in 2000. And there we go. That's what I've been hanging around doing ever since, is crane stuff.
Wicked. So, yeah, this happens a lot actually with military people. They go through these things where they get a trade, particularly machine driving, don't they? And then leave and go into that field. I find it good. But apprenticeships, well, so you was an apprentice to the joiner. They were quite big back then, weren't they, apprenticeships? So they kind of died off a little bit. But I think they're coming back, which is a good thing. I think they're coming back a little bit now.
Yeah, I think, and definitely that has correlated to the drop in some of the standards, I would say, Jim, you know.
Right.
But I remember when I left the army, and it must have been within about a year. Yeah, it was, because I was working on a site for a few months. It was actually close to home. I lived in Hemel Hempstead at the time, and it was actually close to home. And I was on that site when 9/11 happened. So I was on there for a few months leading up to that. So this was 2001. And I was just asking to borrow one of the Chippy's tools because I was making a little box for the front cab, a little storage box for the front cab. And he gave me his chisel, and it was all clogged up with silicon and mastic and all this stuff. It was like, man, what are you doing? Like, we would have got hammered for having our tools in that state. But that was just how it was. And he was 18 and said he was time served. I thought, how can you be time served at 18? Apprenticeships are 4 years long. So you couldn't really be time served until you were like at least 20, you know. But that was apparently what an apprenticeship was. It had been cut down to a couple of years. It then kind of showed that the guy, his standards in terms of maintaining his tools, that wasn't there. His gaffer came up to me and saw, and I was actually making little joints out of a screwdriver because it was better off than this guy's chisel. And his gaffer come up and says, if you're doing any work like that, you'll end up getting a job with me. And I was like, seriously? I mean, I was chippy, like, you know, so I mean, that's I mean, I'm worried about the standard of your guys, yeah.
But can you do a bit now, though? Can you knock things up, do you reckon? Could you hang a door?
This here is actually just a partition. I'm in my attic, and yeah, that's a partition I put up there. Plasterboarded it, painted it. So the floor and wall is all off level in here. But yeah, it's all right. It does the job. So I can do bits and bobs, Jim. You know, I can stick some skirting board and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. But with the army, which I mean, I know a lot of people go into the military. They're a lot of them are kind of lost causes, or they've had problems at home, or they're kind of bit troubled. Was that the case with you, or did you just fancy it? Did you just fancy going in there?
What do you mean was? It still is. A lost cause and loose end and into trouble and all that. Yeah, so nothing changes, Jim. I suppose I wouldn't say that. There are a few like that, but there are a few where it's so there are a few that maybe in that way, and there's a lot of people who've come across probably like yourself, Jim, where they're like, oh, I joined the army and it kept me out of prison, you know? There's definitely people like that. I would say I was in sort of the middle category where I didn't really have any massive direction, but it was something that appealed. And then you'll get people that's an active career choice. That's what they want to do for a specific reason, you know. So because of the way I'd been in Army cadets, and I suppose when I was in Army cadets, I didn't see myself joining the Army, but my dad, he's ex-Royal Marine, and my uncle had been in the Army. I just had the appeal. There were certain things about soldiering that kind of appealed. I thought, why not? It gets me out of my hometown. It gives me a different option, a different route. Why not? What have I got to lose? So, that was kind of what took me in there, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you said they're not all trouble, because actually my boy, he's joining the Powers in September in a few weeks. He doesn't fit into that category either, but he does see he gets bored. Do you know what I mean? So he thinks of school as the production line. He does really well at school, but he gets bored easily. He sees it as a production line, and he thinks that, there's got to be more out there. So he kind of sprung it on us like a year ago, just like, because he was choosing which college or sixth form to go to, like, and then literally I got home and it's like, I've just filled forms out for the Army. It's like, where's this come from? And originally it was just a blank no, you're not doing that. But then after I saw how passionate he was, we said, look, you can go in if you can join me. For those that don't know, it's Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. So he said, all right then. So he went to Purbright, did 3 days there. And he just smashed everything. And they just said, look, you want to do something different. I didn't want to go into infantry. So he said, why don't you join Powers? And he was like, all right, I'm doing that. So now I've gone from him going into one of the safest things to now one of the most dangerous, which isn't good, but you can't stop them doing these things, can you?
Nah. Is that I'm committed to that, is it, Jim? Is he committed now to joining Parachute Regiment, is he?
Yes. So he was actually supposed to start in March, but we kind of persuaded him to carry on doing his sixth form. So do one half of the 2 years of his sixth form, so he gets a little bit of qualifications. So they've accepted him and everything. So he was supposed to start in March, but he's going to be starting in September, providing he's fit enough still.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so have you got any advice for him? Sorry, have you got any advice for him?
I got, interestingly, Jim, I was in a similar predicament. So because I got paid off, I was out of work then as a joiner. I was then just, once I'd set my mind, I'm kind of one of these, if I put my mind on it, it's like, I want to do it now. I'm very, very impulsive. So then when I went to the careers office, I was just like, I was going to go, I'll just join Black Watch or whatever, which was the infantry, just to get in the Army. And fortunately, I'd done well on this kind of entrance test that you do. And there was a guy that was in the careers office. He was saying, well, go in the Scots Guards, And somebody else was saying, Black Watch. And there was a woman in there that was quite sensible. And she says, listen, you got a good result. Why don't you just wait a little bit longer and you can join something like the Royal Engineers or the Army? It's like, okay. And I had, even my dad is an ex-Royal Marine. He'd seen his brother who was in the Royal Engineers. He was actually a commando engineer. So in the engineers, you can either go down the commando route or you can go down the para route, And so my dad had said, well, to be honest, Kev, like I was in the Marines and it was good, I enjoyed it, but my brother, he went in the engineers and he's been able to come out and turn his hand to just about anything. So the thing is, Jim, if he goes in the paras, then it might work for him, but I would say paras is full on. You'll do a lot of weapons stuff. You'll do a lot of soldiering, the very elite soldiers, very fit, get a certain mindset about them, which sets you up well for life. However, there's maybe not so many practical things that are transferable. Whereas if you go in the likes of the engineers, the REMI's different because you work kind of individually and you'll get tasks put out to different units and you'll get attached to different units. Whereas the engineers, you stay within a Royal Engineers unit and you can pick your trade within that. And then you can also choose whether you're going down if you want to go and become a paratrooper within the Royal Engineers, parachutist, or if you want to go in the all-arms commandos, you can do that, which gives it a different edge as well, And there are a lot of guys as well from the engineers, particularly the para-engineers and the commando engineers, who then choose to go into special forces later. So it just gives you more options. However, I wouldn't discourage him if he's got his mindset on being a paratrooper in the parachute regiment, then great. But I would always think, okay, so what is it you're looking for? What's the next step, rather than just getting lost in the whole soldiering aspect of it.
Yes, he does. He does kind of have a plan with that. He did say that he doesn't want to stay in there. He does want to divert from that eventually. Once he's in the door and got some experience, divert to do something different. I don't really want to be institutionalized in that respect. So yeah, that is sound advice. I will let him know. Whether he listens or not is another thing. They don't really listen often at that age, do they? Yeah, cool, man.
Sometimes
cool.
you just have an obligation to say, yeah.
Well, yeah. So what tours did you do?
So I was in from 95 to 2000, and I joined, I got in by the time I'd done all my training, it was early 97 when I went on the para course. So I was in the parachute squadron for just over 3 years. And the only tour that I was involved in then was Kosovo in 1999. Aye. Wow. So there was various things going on. And I left in like 2000, Jim. As I say, to start a family then it all went mental within a couple of years after that. With Afghanistan, there was the second Iraq. So actually, I was between 95 and 2000. I mean, even during basic training, they sort of said to us, well, there's not much chance of sort of on-the-ground soldier. And people had thought that ground warfare was kind of done. They said, oh, you might end up doing a tour of Bosnia, but Northern Ireland had calmed down and all this sort of stuff. So there wasn't a lot going on. And then it just went mental after I'd left. So, yeah, Kosovo, which was an operational tour, and it was fairly hostile, because we were commencing the peace process, and there was a lot of friction between the Serbs and then the Albanians and the Kosovars, and the different factions that were around in that area. So, yeah, there was a bit of calming to do, and there was a couple of real touch-and-go situations. There was actually one point where we got briefed that this could be the start of World War III, and some of you might not come back. There are a couple of people that are well known in the media that have spoken about that incident, and I was there in the field when the helicopters come down for us all to go on and head up to Pristina Airfield to potentially do battle with the Russians, And it was put up to Yeltsin, Blair, and Clinton level, and it was de-escalated from there, So.
Yeah, wow. So it was hostile, but you kind of, pardon the pun, so you kind of dodged the bullet a bit with what came after. Really?
Yeah. I've often thought, I mean, I've kind of thought, would I have wanted to have been in at that time? And had I stayed in, then you just go with what comes along, of course, for sure. But yeah, without getting into the politics of it and all the rest of it, I think it's sad to see what's happened to some people as a result of those conflicts, not necessarily on the grounds of actually defending our country and our territory. It's quite sad. So yeah, that was a difficult situation.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you go in any swamps?
Swamps?
Yeah, bit of a random question, bit of a random one. Did you go in any swamps at all?
Nah. I've been in some bogs on Scottish hills, but nah. Not been in any swamps, no.
I read this book probably over 20 years now ago. I think it was Andy McNab that wrote it. And it was saying about when they went into swamps and stuff like that, they had to check each other's arseholes and stuff like that for leeches. That's just stuck in my head, like that image. I just wondered, have you ever had to do that? Check other people's orifices for leeches?
Yeah, there was occasional opportunities for doing jungle warfare training, and it was actually something I wanted to do, but I just never got the opportunity to do it while I was in gym. But yeah, there was certainly guys where there were stories, and as I say, there was a few guys who end up going special forces, and they end up, of course, on if you're going for SAS selection and you get through the initial phase, then you end up on the jungle phase, and so I've heard various stories of those kind of things, and you don't pee into water courses and stuff like that because you can get little creatures swimming up your pee and then going into your body through your dick, which ain't the best thing, really.
No, nobody wants that, do they? Really?
Ah.
No. But what about so also you teach about safety and stuff like that. Now I can imagine the machine operating and stuff in the military was the safety aspect of it was a lot different to that on site. Is that right? Like the attitude towards safety.
Well, what makes you think that? How do you see it, Jim?
Well, I know that. Well, obviously, if you're out on tour, there's not as many people to police what you're up to, is there? When you're out on site, you've got so many eyes on you. You've got people taking photos. You've got health and safety on you all the time. I just wonder if it's different, or if you are policed as well in the military. Is it strict on safety, or is it kind of gung ho once you're out there doing your own thing?
I would say it sits somewhere in between those.
Right.
And from what I hear, my nephew has also been in the army, and he left a good few years ago now. But from him and from other people since have said the health and safety side has really come in a lot more in the military. And of course, let's not kind of knock it. Some of the health and safety stuff is really, really good. It is. It's helpful. However, I see a lot of health and safety people that are, in some cases, barriers to actually getting stuff done, which is sad. You know, it's about, for me, in terms of looking at the safety side, it's about how do we get this job done safely, rather than, oh, that's no good, let's stop the work. In the army, I mean, one of the real stick-out moments for me, I actually hit somebody in the head with a bucket when we were on tour in Kosovo. It was one of the most awful times, and that's informed me a lot in the way you go about things and in terms of taking responsibility for mistakes and such like. And for a split second, I thought I'd killed him, Jim. It was horrendous. It's the most awful feeling ever. And perhaps other people can relate to that as well, when you take an action and actually you think your action has possibly killed or seriously injured someone, just even for a split second. Fortunately, got up very quickly, and all it had done was given him a headache and a chipped tooth. But it could have been a hell of a lot worse. But that was, I would say that our approach to things was much more dynamic. When I'd done the plant operator course, it was very much on safety precautions, and that was the first thing. But there were certain things that we just done before we start working on the machine. You know, you made sure that the rams were protected so that the boom couldn't come down and stuff like that. Certain elements that you're just like stopping yourself as much as possible from being killed. But we kind of dealt with things much more in the moment. I think what happens a lot of the time, Jim, is some people are trying to control everything through thought processes and having, oh yeah, if we take this standardized approach, but it doesn't always work like that. Things are always evolving. Things are always changing. So I believe having a very good level of perception of risk and applying that to every activity you do, every moment, is the best approach. And that's really what I try and do now, is I empower people and I help organizations understand that empowering people to make good quality decisions in the moment is far better. And I found that's how we done things in the military a lot. But yeah, there were certain things that were done even as part of our training. Is, you know, to become a paratrooper, you were walking along stuff that if you fell off, then you were likely to be seriously injured at the very least. However, some of that is pushing you through and telling you that, well, this is something that you wouldn't put on paper to say this is all right to do. But actually, when you do it, you learn a strategy to enable you to do it, which you can't apply to everybody. But that's why, like risk assessment and all these processes, you can't just apply them across the board to every person, because every person thinks differently, has different perceptions of risk, and has different abilities. So that was very much how we dealt with it in the military, for sure. It was, you were looked out for each other. You really did. You had a system of looking out for each other and really considering what you could do in that moment without causing injury to the person next to you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Actually, I think that should be transferred into any aspect of life. Really, it's interesting. You speak about taking responsibility. I think you've seen on LinkedIn, I do a Friday faux pas feature where I highlight bad practice that other people do. So people send me pictures and videos or whatever, And I just highlight what's wrong and what you could do better. But I've been thinking to myself, well, why don't I talk about things that I've done in the past that I probably should have done better? So I did one today actually. And I do think that we should not only take responsibility for our own actions, but also take responsibility for what other people are doing as well. Do you know what I mean? So, for example, let's say you have somebody a bit inexperienced working with you, maybe help them out a little bit, maybe give them advice. If you see them doing something not quite right, just, say, come on, John, get out of that crush zone or whatever, things like that. And then, because sometimes there's a little bit of a blame game involved, isn't there, in construction? Like people are trying to cover themselves, where I think we've all got a part to play to sort of take ownership. Yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, certainly. It was when I left the army, Jim. One thing that I kind of took bad with was when I was then on construction sites. And let's say you saw somebody struggling with something. My thing was I'd just go and help them. If they were struggling to lift something, I'd go and help them. And if I was struggling with something, I struggled that people would just walk by. And whereas in the army, if you saw that somebody needed help and something needed done, unless there was something that was you were tasked to do and it was important in that moment, you helped them. That was the way it was. And yeah, I realised that, of course, there's certain things we say as military people about Civvy Street and how civvies go about things, but it is a different attitude. And some people are very much just out for themselves. And it's not always a conscious process to just choose to be that way. Some just don't even see outside of their own tunnel. But yeah, if we had more of that and definitely helping people out, I often say to people, you're not there to be like a coach or a therapist for people, but at least if you kind of have an understanding as what led to people arriving to a particular way of thinking or a typical situation or action, at least you've got an opportunity then to help them see otherwise. If they choose not to go with you on that, that's their lookout. But yeah, at least if we kind of give people an opportunity, and there's certainly young people, because they so often get preached to and told, yeah, you should be doing this, or what do you know, you're just young, and all this nonsense. And actually, if we can help expand their mind, we're creating better leaders for the future, for sure.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, even things like, my car's in the garage, and so we've got this courtesy car and it's electric. And you know what they're like? They're really quiet, don't they? I was thinking, what if a kid runs out? So my way of thinking is, if a kid runs out in front of the car, rather than shouting at him, you idiot, watch where you're going, just think to yourself, well, actually, the car's really quiet. Maybe I should actually be a little bit more careful how I'm driving, So, but you've got, I think it's getting better now, but there were a lot of dinosaurs out there back in the day, weren't there? A lot of dinosaurs that were like, I've been doing it like this every time and it's been all right. And I think that attitude has got to be weaned out a little bit.
Yeah, it's a difficult time, Jim. I've said this for years now, both for parents, maybe. So I've got a young baby now, and I've got 4 older sons. Thank you. My oldest son is actually 23. So when I was raising him, and around that time, I was like, so we're the generation that's now had to go from where it was so common just to smack kids and all the rest of it, and now it's become taboo. It's maybe been seen as it's not helpful, but we're not really being given any amazing alternatives. And it's like, how are we dealing? How we kind of, because the older people would say, oh yeah, I mean, my day, the kid would just get a smack and that was it and that worked. Well, it's not working now and we need to find an alternative, but we're kind of in that flux of things changing and finding new ways of doing things that are effective. I think maybe now, 20 odd years down the line since I had my first child, we're kind of learning a bit more on yeah, there are alternatives, and we can be assertive without being physical and stuff like that. And if you look in the construction industry, there's a lot of people that were used to it being a very dictatorial way of going about things and just telling people and shouting at them. And it's like, okay, so that's not seen as an effective way. But what is an effective way? And people aren't always being given stuff on the soft skills and how to communicate effectively and be good leaders. So I think that's a real struggle. We're still trying to work that out as to how to go about really motivating people. And like I often say, Jim, it takes a bit of work, but you can kind of be assertive without being a dick, you know. But
Absolutely,
it is tricky if you've got good boundaries and it's very clear that you're reasonably fair. I think sometimes when there's times where you do give people the opportunity to air their view and you listen to what they've got to say, then they'll respect when there are other times that you say, guys, there's no option. We've just got to get it done this way and we've got to get it done quickly, you know? And they will take that. They'll kind of realise there's an element of urgency within that. But if that's your way of going about it all the time, that doesn't work so much anymore, you know. But I've struggled as well, Jim, you know, because when I was in the army, it was a tough squadron I was in. If you made a mistake, then often you got a smack for it. That was the way it was. You know, you got belted. I took a few heavy smacks, you know, for saying the wrong thing or making a mistake on stuff, and you know, you get walloped for it at times. And was it effective? I think it was at times, Jim. That's the thing. You know, I think it was, and there's times where I thought that see people doing things on site, and I just think, see if you were in the army, see if you were in my squadron, somebody would have lamped you for that. Simple. You wouldn't. It would have been. We'll discuss it after, but first you're getting lamped. You know, and it's so even in my mind, there's that element of there's still kind of finding new ways of doing things that are actually effective. So we're in that flux, I think.
Yes, so other people respond differently to things, don't they? So it might work. That might work for some people. I mean, I used to get it. My mum was very strict, so I did get a clip round the ear roll, and it did me okay. But it might not work for somebody else. They might rebel against that, and they might fight back. So I think it's important to know who you're dealing with, to know how to interact with them, sort of thing. And I know, like with management, I think they go through these types of courses of people skills and stuff like that, which is helpful. Not all of them are good, these management, but I think a lot of them these days are getting better at that sort of thing, interacting and dealing with people. Have you got employees?
No, not at the moment. Anyway, no.
Just your little old self, yeah.
Yes, I'm building a one-man empire at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying that as well, mate. It's a long, slow journey, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Got
a thing up on the wall just out of shot there that says, every day take a small step that your future self will thank you for.
Exactly that. I like that one. Did you make that one up, or did you get that?
No, most of my good ideas are nicked from other people.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I'll nick that as well then, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
How was driving mobile cranes then? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did. It was, for me, it was like a puzzle, Jim. The tower crane side of things didn't massively appeal. I felt there was a little bit too variety driven for tower cranes. You know, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a guy called Tony Robbins, but a big American life coach guy and does seminars. But I've been to some of his seminars and he talks about human needs, and it's really pretty cool what he talks about and understand that. So a lot of people are very certainty driven. They like routine, they like to know what's happening, they like structure. But then you get people who are more driven by uncertainty, by variety. And I would say that I'm a bit more uncertainty and variety driven than certainty driven. So the mobile crane side of things really fits into that, because you don't really know what jobs you're going on to the next day. Most of the time, it's going to be different things, working with different people. And it's often like solving little puzzles as well as on the mobile cranes, particularly we're going to different jobs. Whereas I sort of viewed it with tower cranes, you're typically on the same site for a period of time. You know what loads you're likely to be lifting the next day. You're probably doing similar hours. So again, whatever type of person you are, will lend those different situations will lend itself to different kinds of people. So yeah, I just found it that it was very good in terms of variety. I just enjoyed the problem solving element of it, both with carrying out lifts on the cranes as an operator and then going into planning and supervising lifts as well.
So that was like a natural progression, was it? The advance into supervising and planning, yeah? Did you get to a point where you think, oh, I've just had enough of this, or you strike me as a person who wants to grow and advance in your life? I'm kind of the same, want to grow.
Yes, yeah. Well, again, growth is one of what Tony Robbins considers as one of the human needs. Yeah. So some people are very growth driven, sometimes unhealthily, and maybe you'll progress quicker than is helpful because you're maybe not building any level of expertise at a particular level before you move on to the next one. But yeah, I would say that the growth is quite high up there for me. And it was, with regards to becoming an appointed person, I don't know if it was really too much looking at that. I can't really remember, but what had happened, I'd got on heavy cranes fairly quickly, Jim. I was on just a 50-ton capacity mobile crane. And then the two guys that were on the 300-tonner at the depot I was working out of, they left. So there was an opportunity for another two to go on the 300-tonner. And the guy who was first in line for it, he'd been on cranes for 16, 17 years at the time, knowledgeable guy, and he was kind of next in line. He was on pretty much the next crane size down at the time. So that was natural for him to move up to it. And then it was the case of selecting who was going on the crane with him. So there was a couple of us. I got selected. I put my name forward for it, got selected to be inducted on it. So there was three of us got inducted, and it turned out the guy that went on the crane as the second man, so to speak, it wasn't working for him. So for whatever reason, so I ended up going on the 300-tonner fairly quickly, and yeah, just really enjoyed it. I just seemed to fit into it quite well. The guy that I was on the crane with, a guy called Dennis, he had a lot of experience, so I was able to draw on his experience. But what I was very good at doing was remembering procedures and remembering the positions of the boom when we were standing the luffer up and these kind of things. So we were very good at, yeah, we need to be there, Den. And then there'd be other things that Den would say to me, oh, Kev, we need to stop on this. I've seen this happen before. So we were able to bounce off of each other well that way. And then maybe because of that, it was about 18 months later, then I got asked if I wanted to go on an appointed person course. So then, yeah, I think it was really after I'd switched companies and then the recession kicked in, and that was where I started thinking around about 2008. I want to have a few more options when the next recession comes around, because my overtime had been massively hit, struggling like many other people, struggling to pay the mortgage, and it was just a difficult time. And that was when I really started considering what my option was for the future. I wanted a little bit more stability in my income, Jim, and to be able to make my own choices a little bit more. Thought about getting my own crane for a period of time. Could see that was going to cost a lot of money to invest in that. I didn't know where I was going to get the money from to do that. I was already strapped as it was, But I decided to get into training. So I self-funded to become a trainer in 2010. So that was my progression. Was it natural progression? I don't know. I think I just tried to take everything in as much as possible, Jim. Anything that was useful to me, I just looked around, constantly curious and trying to learn from good people, learn from situations, and yeah, look to see how it could grow, and that's what it led to.
So you decided to become a trainer in what? Sorry,
2010.
No, train what?
To train to get into becoming a CPCS trainer and tester. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
So
how different operations.
So how difficult was your AP course? 'Cause, I mean, this podcast is predominantly designed for people who are curious about the industry, about getting into certain roles. So how difficult was that AP course for you to do?
Well, I was kind of fortunate because I'd done it before it became a CPCS category, Jim. It was a CITB course. So CITB would then at times go in and monitor the actual course being run. So it was a 3-day course. Now, if you hadn't done, I remember there being some people on the same course who were more site management, and they hadn't really done a lot of lifting operations, and they found it a lot more difficult. I was kind of fortunate with the assessment scenario I got was one with a big crane on luffer, doing like a big flare stack at a refinery. So I was working on a crane with luffer as it was anyway, and I'd done pretty well. However, having delivered, God knows how many AP courses, hundreds of AP courses to thousands of people now that have delivered the AP training. What I would say to other people, and I've actually done a video on this on my YouTube channel on being successful on the AP course, it's always very difficult to predict who's going to find it challenging, Jim, because it's not so much about what experience you've got. It's not so much about how knowledgeable you are. Of course, those are factors for sure. Those are more factors in how well I would say you would do in the job rather than on the course. It's not necessarily how academic you are. It's about how you think. That is the biggest factor. How good is your attention to detail? Like, if you be honest with yourself, ask yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is my attention to detail on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it like 1, I miss everything, I very barely have like 2 things connect up? Or is it 10, I'm like proper anal about everything, you know? Because attention to detail is a massive thing. Also being able to think in a systematic way of, okay, is this one thing? I'll do this, then I'll move on to the next. So those are, for me, the 2 biggest factors in how well people get on in the AP course. I'm absolutely passionate about helping people who are in our industry and they're in the position I was in, feeling stuck. We're working hours and hours and hours, still not have enough money to pay the bills, and looking for a way to progress and take charge of their own life. And that's one of the steps that you can do to do that, is start moving on to that AP. But like anything else, Jim, the biggest factor is training how you think. You know, that's the biggest thing. You could go and, like, even by going and watching the YouTube videos and tutorials, okay, you might think on the surface you're picking up the technical elements, but what you're doing is you're building discipline of doing what it requires in order to get to where you want to go. That's the biggest thing.
Yes, that's interesting. I actually wanted to touch on that later about training how to think. So a little subject later. Excuse me while I just adjust the camera height here. It's getting on my nerves. It's bugging me the whole time. How long was you an AP for? Did you find it stressful?
As an AP?
Yeah, because, you know, I'm a tail crane operator. I don't think I could do that job. I just think I like to be able to go home and switch off. I just think I'll be waking up in the middle of the night because I care. Wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, did I do that? Did I send that email? Did I sign that off? Blah, blah, blah. Did you get much stress with it?
Yes, to a degree, Jim. Again, I think from what you're sensing there and what you're kind of concerned about there, and even what you were saying earlier on about tech and stuff like that, a lot of that comes down to just not being familiar with it. And once you get familiar with processes, so again, of course, like, yeah, get worried about things. But I suppose in some way, like when you talk about that, it brings me back to when I moved from a national crane hire company when I was on a 300-tonner. And then I went to a much smaller crane hire company at the time, and I was on an old 250-tonner. It was virtually the same machine, but it was an older version. And what they'd done is they'd improved that and changed some of the systems on there, and then it had been upgraded to a 300-tonner. So it was virtually the same machine. However, when I was at Hewden, I was on there with another operator and one of the ballast driver who knew lots about the machine as well and knew how to put the luffer together. Then when I went to a smaller company, there were some times where actually I was the only one who knew about how to put the luffer together and people were just working to my instruction. At those times, Jim, I was waking up through the night and I was visualizing going through the luffer and thinking, okay, so it's that, then it's that, then it's that. And I was visualizing that process and trying to kind of calm myself down in advance so I could make sure that people are not just running off doing this, that, and the next thing, and that I was making sure everything was in place before that leather went up in the air. That was the key thing. If you've not made sure before that comes off the ground that it's all in order, you're now hanging off a load off of it, and you don't know whether it's good to go or not. So I experienced that as an operator, and I think the transition into planning lifts, I seem to be doing a lot of that anyway. I was going out with some of the APs at times that weren't so sure about the heavier cranes and helping them with planning the lifts. So, yeah, but I don't know. I had a therapist, I've been to see therapists a few times over the years, Jim, and one said, you seem to attract drama. You seem to want to create drama. And it's like, yeah, often I seem to try to make things more difficult for myself. And I think that was one thing I've always done. I've continued to dive in at the deep end. So, yeah, I think it probably was, Jim. It was stressful, but I'd exposed myself to that anyway. So I was kind of used to dealing with that. And maybe even being a paratrooper in the army, that had got me in that way of, right, come on, I'll do what needs to be done, and having that approach to it. So I would say, it's not something to put anybody off. Definitely not. You just try things, try and kind of expose yourself to a reasonable level of risk without putting in a position where it's dangerous. You know what you're exposing yourself to. Reach out, have support, keep building your little systems, and it's achievable for sure, without question.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, it is, yeah. I wouldn't say, I was just about to say everything's achievable, but not everything is achievable. But you can try your best to achieve everything that you can. I was a ground worker before. I was a groundwork foreman, and I did used to get stressed with it. But like you say, once you get experienced, when there are problems, you've got the tools to deal and adapt to those problems rather than being a deer stuck in headlights like, what do I do? Yeah, it's all right. But, yeah, interestingly, you did touch on something else I want to talk about, actually, that you attract drama. So I watched a little talk you did. Tell me how we challenge our identity.
Okay, yeah. So that's a TEDx talk I done a few years ago now. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the time, I'd just come through a phase. So that was, I'd come through a very difficult period in my life, I would say, Jim. So I'd become a trainer in 2010, developed the training centre for Emerson Crane Hire for 4 years, then left Emerson in 2014. I decided to go freelance, decided to go out on my own. I had very little direction, to be honest, and knowing how I was going to develop that business. And it was going through, then it led to, it didn't lead to, just around that period, I was then going through divorce and such like. And I just totally lost focus and direction, didn't know what I was doing. And then I went into a business partnership that didn't work out either. And I was just totally down on myself, mate. It was like, I'm not even capable of doing the things that I want to do in the industry. So 2019, I was then totally out of work, but also was in a position that I didn't want to just go back into working just to pay the bills. So I was like, nah, stuff it. I'll wait. Then if people want money out of me, so be it. They can come and get it. I'll negotiate with companies to try and make it so that I'm paying something to them, and then they're not making me bankrupt. So that kind of worked out as well. But it gave me a real evaluation as to how I wanted my life to go. And at that point, I decided that I wasn't just going to do work. I was going to actually choose what work I'd done and work more smartly, and work with the people that I wanted to work with and do the projects that I wanted to work with. I went back into employment then for a while. That didn't work out either. COVID kicked off, and I just don't think the company and I massively aligned on the way we were going with things. So that didn't work out. And then that come to the odds towards the end of 2020. And that's when I was like, stuff it, I'm going to start a business again. So I started InspHigher in late 2020. And it was around that whole time was really, and I'd done a few talks at various places on challenging identity, because I'd really challenged my identity, Jim. My identity was largely based on grafting hard, putting the hours in, and I'm comfortable in saying I was a grafter. There not many fit people that could physically outgraft me. Of course, some people will feel challenged by that and go, I could. It was the minority, right? I was a good physical grafter. And that was my identity. How hard I worked, how much I sweated, how many hours I worked. And I had to change that. I had to change that in order to do something different in life. My identity had to become more aligned with the value that I was creating, the contribution that I was giving to the industry, rather than how many hours I worked. So there was certain things, and there was a number of different things as well, that were very heavily influencing my thought processes, which I realized were parts of my identity. And I had to break those down. So then I saw that was actually something that would be helpful for many people. I thought about people who, it came to mind about a story I'd heard of a rugby player. And that was his identity. And he was in a car accident, could no longer play rugby again, and was suicidal about this. And then I looked around at people, and maybe people who their identity was being financially wealthy and they lose everything. And then there's all of a sudden this huge void in their life. They're in absolute despair about their situation. And I thought, how can we avoid getting to that position where life throws these really challenging situations to us and we don't end up in total despair? And then sadly, where some of us and some people end up ending their lives, which is really sad, which comes from a place of, I'm sure, despair. So challenge your identity. What that was about is, can you be proactive in really becoming aware of what you're aligning yourself with, what is maybe limiting you, and actually, if life throws a curveball that removes that from you, how are you going to deal with it? So that's what challenge your identity is about. It's about what's really kind of, if I was to remove that, I would feel a little bit lost. Okay, so let's not allow life to remove that from me. Let's start doing some little things that maybe don't make that such a strong feature of who I am. So that's what it's about.
Yeah. So basically, I get that. And kind of like changing the story you tell yourself as well, sort of thing. Yeah.
Massively. Yeah.
Are you still in that process? How does Kevin Bennison challenge his identity these days?
Well, it has to happen all the time, Jim. It has to happen all the time. So I suppose what I look at now, we're all flawed beings, Anyone that's not, well, one, either fair play to you if you're not, but I don't believe you. So then a lot of people, that if they don't think they're flawed, they're in denial, and other people will see their flaws far better than they will. So we're all flawed at whatever level we go to. There's always something when you level up and you go to the next level in life. I remember reading a business book years ago, right? And it basically said, if you don't ask yourself, what the fuck am I doing? Then you're just not playing at enough of a level. You're not pushing. And that's what happens, I think, is you go up to another level and you go, how the hell do I do this? And it's like, there'll be something within your makeup that's perhaps, if you sit on that and go, well, I'm just not that kind of person, your brain will go, yeah, no bother, let's just go back to easy street, So it's up to back, like, okay, so I kind of suppose I value it because we can't do everything, Jim. As one of my mentors says, you can do anything, but you can't do everything, which I believe, that you got to pick what you're going to do. And if you're going to do it well, then it requires leveling up and it requires taking on things that you don't feel that comfortable with. So I was saying earlier, I'm doing this e-learning thing, right? I've been banging on about it for years, Jim, for years. about doing e-learning because I feel it would be beneficial to the industry. Of course, there's the naysayers. Nah, it's all got to be classroom training. All right, do you want to do a classroom course? Nah, because I can't take time off work. All right, so e-learning might actually be a good thing for you then, yeah? Where you can actually do it in your own time. All right, yeah. So, like, but I've been going, yeah, but I'm not very good at the story I've been telling myself. I'm not very good at sitting down and getting on my content. I like to be out and going and doing things. As long as I tell myself that story, Jim, I'm giving myself an excuse for not getting on with it. So at the moment, now getting on with it. And yeah, I'm challenging myself on, and because I suppose in my mind, right, there's something within, because I don't know of anybody else within my immediate family that's entrepreneurial, okay? And most they'll go along with, yeah, that's what I do for a living, and stick with that, you know? And so it's very difficult to look around the family and see people that I can draw inspiration from on being entrepreneurial. So a part of me goes, yeah, you're not really that kind of person, though, are you? And there's something within me that says, yeah, but you're not really somebody that's the kind of person that would be successful in business. So I have to keep pushing through that, and I have to go, yes, done right. Like, as long as I'm doing the things that take me forward step by step, even small steps each day, then yes, I'm exactly the kind of person that can do well in business. So that's the kind of things that challenging, and sometimes it's very difficult to even see those things because they're back there. They're the stories that somebody else told you. They're the people that you've hung around with. They're your past experiences and mistakes. But that's what challenge your identity is really about. Let's not sit on them. Let's go for the things that, if you had none of those holding you back, what would you do with your life? Because then, like, let's make it that those things are not holding you back. And that is an act of choice. It's just a very hard one. And that's what I do to challenge my identity, Jim. Every day.
Good man. Good man. Yes. Do you know what? That really, really, really resonates. It really does, because, I started this journey probably 6 months ago, blogging and the website and the YouTube channel. I hate being on camera. I hate the YouTube channel. I really do. But I know it's something that I have to do. And I actually made, let me see if I can find it. I've lost you there a little bit. Let me see if I can find it. I made a table. Let's go into my documents. I made a table. I called it Wealth Consciousness.
Okay.
Right.
Before you bring it up, Jim, can I just ask you a question?
Go on.
If you hate the YouTube channel, what's the driver for doing it? What is your driver?
I don't hate the YouTube channel. I hate being on camera, and I hate filming myself talking. The drive is to educate people about the crane industry, to help people, and also to drive traffic to my website. So the articles I write, it's handy to have video evidence of what I'm writing. So I make a video and it drives people to the website, and vice versa. Hopefully make a bit of money on the way with subscribers and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that's what's driving me. But let me see. Oh, wealth consciousness. So, what's going on here? So I always ask myself, do I want to be wealthy? This is the thing. This is the story you tell yourself. So it always used to scare me. So current beliefs. So I've got a side, on one side I've got current beliefs. What if I don't know what I'm doing and I mess it all up because I'm winging it? Desired beliefs. I'm smart, I'm creative, I'm persistent, hardworking and determined. Mistakes are fine, I'll learn from them. So stuff like that. And then another table where you bridge the gap. What if I don't know what I'm doing? I'll mess it all up because I'm winging it. So try it, perfect it after. Not trying is not achieving. I'm going to do all the research I can and surround myself with all the right people to achieve my goals. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that resonated with me. Exactly what you said there.
Did you do Milking Your Mind Intensive by any chance?
No. What's that?
No. Where did you learn that from?
Funny enough, that was off YouTube.
Was it?
So, yeah. So I can't remember his name, what channel he was, but he does inspirational stuff like that, how to train your mind into doing certain things and to succeed. Yeah. So does it sound familiar then? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know whether it's like Robert Kiyosaki or Joe Dispenza or one of those kind of people. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So now I've lost my questions. Yeah. So no, it wasn't. Oh no. Yeah, so it wasn't one of those, no. But yeah, it resonates and it makes sense what you're saying. It really does. You do have to challenge yourself every day. Even small things like I started having a cold shower every morning. I don't want to, but it's something to push yourself, to get you out of the comfort zone, you know? So
I'll give you a good example then as well, Jim, in challenging my own identity, right? So for a few years there, like, it became important to me to get balance in my life because most of it was work. Like, all that filled my head was work. I didn't see so much about my older kids when they were growing up because I was working. I just thought, I'm a provider. I go to work to provide, right? So then I had a period of time where I was getting this balance and was able to go and spend days out on the hills when I wanted to and all the rest of it. And I didn't really have any routine. It was happily chaotic, you could say, right? So now, I mean, I went to a business seminar a few weeks back, a couple of months ago now, back in May. And the chap that was giving a session, a guy called Nick James, he said, so there's certain pillars to being successful in business. And the foundation is personal performance. So you need to rate your personal performance. If that's not up there at a certain level, you're not going to build your business on it. It's as simple as that. And I thought, okay, if I'm being really honest with myself, my personal performance is maybe about a 5 or a 6 because I'm not being consistent. And then, so I was like, I need to nail this. So now, okay, I don't stick by the timetable, but my thing now, my little routine is I get up in the morning, probably about 6:30, between 6:30 and 7. So I'm not particularly early when it comes to the crane game, you know. It's early for most people, for the average person, but for crane people, it's not. You know, I used to be up a lot earlier, but of course I then went through a period of time that it was later. So I get up at sort of 6:30, 7, get up with the wee one, and give my partner a chance so she can rest and sleep for a while. And then I'll see him for a little while, take him out for a walk, do a couple of things around the house, and then I'm ready to crack on with my work at 10 o'clock. Sometimes I might have answered emails or calls or whatever before then, but to get on with creative work. And having that routine, sticking to it, is very challenging for me because my brain goes, but I want to be able to do what I want when I want, not when something tells me, you know? So that's another thing for me as well. But like, where you're saying, the reason I asked you about what your driver is, maybe you've seen the video that's got like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and all these people, and they're getting asked about what does it take? And Steve Jobs kind of said, like, you need to be passionate about what you do. You need to be absolutely passionate because when things get tough, and they will get very tough, he says, you need to be passionate. He says, no, you don't, it's not passionate. He says, you need to be obsessed because when things get hard, that's the only thing that's going to see you through. So for me, it's like, you need to get a little bit obsessed about what you're doing so that because like life will test you, man. I do believe that the universe will test you and go, all right, so you're going to do this. Let's just see where you do it when I chuck this at you. And if you keep going, you know, you're serious about it. Well, here's this little spanner in the works. If you get over this one, and if you don't get like distracted by it, then you might be onto something, you know? So there's a bit of that as well.
Yeah. Yes. I do believe I am obsessed with it. I actually, I get moaned at constantly from my wife and my family because it's like, all you're doing is this. All you're thinking about is that. It's like, well, I kind of have to. This is my thing. This is what I'm doing now. But also, I just thought of something there. What else drives me? So the buzz from not just doing the work, but the buzz from the anxiety, the buzz from the stress, like doing these. I mean, I get anxious and nervous before every podcast, right? But I'll tell you what I liken it to. You was a high competitor in taekwondo, right? Yeah, world champion.
Yeah, it was a hobby, but yeah, I done well, Jim. Yeah, I done well.
Yeah. So I was the same in karate, not world level, but karate national level, right? I beat some world champions, I must admit, but the build up to each competition, I was a nightmare. Like my wife would tell me, you was an absolute nightmare to live with, like because the preparation, getting in the right headset, the mindset, the practicing, the focus, the nerves, even right up to the sparring session, the nervous energy. And then once I stepped foot on the mat, It's like, bang, 200 people are watching me. Normally, I hate people watching me. I don't like being the centre of attention, but yeah, 200 people are watching me doing it. Man, this is my thing. You know, I hope they are watching me. It's not really the same, but it's the similar sort of buzz I get. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely an interesting one, Jim. You know, I've often said to people, if you really want to challenge yourself, and I would say, of course, I can only speak from the man perspective. I think we go through, typically, there are certain different things we go through in life as men and as women. So I can only kind of give them a perspective as a man. But as a man, it's like, if I'm given a physical challenge, I sort of knew how that looked. Sometimes I'd have a bit of fear around it and anxiety, but you said to me, you got to get your pack on and just run up and down that hill. It's like, this is going to be hell, but I know how to do it. You're going to get punched in the face. It's not going to be nice, but I know how to get punched in the face. You know, I've taken punches in the face, so I know how to deal with that. But then some of the things that to do with that emotional growth and that mental growth, that's a lot more challenging, you know. And this sort of stuff that we're doing here does challenge that. It challenges our insecurities. What if we look like an idiot? What if people criticize us? And all those little things. And you got to go, fuck off, voice. You're not helpful to me. Okay. I'm doing it anyway. You know, it's easier to go, well, if I get smacked up, I get smacked up. That's just the way it is, you know. And it's easier to deal with that, you know. And with the taekwondo, much like yourself, Jim, I think I was actually okay. I'm more of a nightmare. Say if I've got a big talk to do, or I'm doing a course I've not done before, and I've got a bit of underlying anxiety about that, then until, you know, I can even see in myself the person that I am leading up to it and the person I am after it's done and it's out the way, and I've got that first course ran, or I've done that talk, and it's like, all that stuff that I was worried about in my brain, it wasn't real. It wasn't there. I went there and I smashed it, and I done how I typically do, you know? But I get where you're coming from and leading up to the competitions, But visualization's really important. I used to just visualize kicking people in the head. I used to visualize getting my hand held up at the end and stuff like that.
Yeah. I used to meditate that a lot. So I meditate every scenario for ages. But I mean, I used to tell my daughter, actually, so it's the holidays now. They've just started the holidays for school. So what used to happen is, approaching coming back to school, she used to get really, really, really hectic. Oh, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. I don't want to go to school tomorrow. And she'll be in bed talking about it for ages. And I say to her, look, you're not at school yet. Worry about school tomorrow. Don't worry about it now. This is your time. Don't give it your time. It's not here yet. School's not here. So worry about it tomorrow. And even in the morning, you're not at school. So when you're sitting there having breakfast, don't worry about school, because you're having breakfast. You're not at school. You know, the only time you need to be worrying about school is when you're literally at school, and there's nothing to worry about because you know what you're doing, you know?
Yeah.
So,
that's awesome advice, Jim. Yeah. It's like living in the present. I've read a lot of Eckhart Tolle. Well, I say a lot. Read or listened to a couple of Eckhart Tolle's books. There's The Power of Now, and there's A New Earth. And Eckhart Tolle is all about living in the present. And it's funny, there's a bit that he goes, when you're very present and you ask yourself, what have I got to worry about right now? And it's when you're in the present, it's like you don't have anything to worry about in that present moment. Most of our worries come from, you know, perceptions, or casting into the future and getting anxious about the future, or about what's happened before and what people think about it. You know, if you stay very present, it's right enough. It's a shame. A lot of people do destroy the present moment through worrying about the future. Future ain't real, man. The only real moment that's real is the present.
Exactly that. Yeah. Time isn't real, is it really? That's what they say. Well, time's not real. But what I saw in that talk you did, you was talking about your stability, taekwondo being your stability. Is that still the case, or what is your stability now?
Yeah, good question. It very much was at the time, Jim. So I won gold medal twice at World Championships. That was as a coloured belt, right? And I'd got into taekwondo when I was relatively old. It was kind of mid to late 30s when I got into taekwondo. And it was just one of these things that was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. And I went all in, and I was, doing all kinds of things. And it's interesting when you talk to people who just do something and practice at something as to somebody that actually wants to do it well. And of course, I was standing at home, my foot pointing towards the wall with my other leg up, doing dynamic stretches over and over and over again, and box jumps and blah, blah, blah. And so I won gold at the World Championships as a blue belt in 2016. And then 2018 was the next World Championships. And by then, I'd separated with my ex-wife. I was living in a house of multiple occupancy. So I just had an ensuite bedroom, basically. My business was on its knees, and I was losing focus in the industry. Didn't have two pennies to rub together. And there seemed to be nothing that was stable in my life, apart from the taekwondo. The only thing I felt I could have control over was keeping myself fit and training. And that's what I'd done. So when I then won the final at the World Championships in 2018, and I got my hand held up, it didn't feel so much like a victory against my opponent. It felt more like a victory against all the things that I was struggling with in life at the moment. And I actually retained something for myself that I had control over. So going on then, I mean, then became black belt later on that year. Was it? Yeah, I think it was later on that year. I got my first dan. And then my first competition as a black belt, I actually won that. And I beat a guy in the English national squad in the final. And I won that. And that's not really supposed to happen. But by then I was into my 40s, and I kind of thought, and I got beat at the next competition, and and I moved town as well. So I'd started at a new dojang, and I kind of thought, am I really in a position to keep putting my body through this, and the amount of fitness that I need to do in order to compete with these guys who are in many cases 20, sometimes more years younger than me? I thought, what would I get out of it? I thought, well, I'd enjoy continuing to compete, but actually if it was 10, 15 years younger, I'd be wanting to push to get in the national squad, which I felt had I been a lot younger, I could have been knocking on the door of the national squad. But to be honest, Jim, I just thought it's not worth putting myself through the amount of fitness I have to do in order to maintain that, and I can't do it half-heartedly. So I then took time out, particularly when COVID come along. And to be honest, although I've done a bit of boxing and a bit of kickboxing here and there since, I've never gone back to it, certainly since I moved up to Scotland 3 years ago. And the association I was part of, they're not up as far as I live, so I would have to join another association. But I've been thinking about going back to it. But really, what then became my stability was spending time outdoors, out camping on the hillside, hiking, rock climbing. So I got into something else, another bit of an obsession, and became a mountain leader, and that gave me stability. Now I would say my stability is more focusing on building the future, a better future for myself, my family, my kids, and I'm becoming a little bit obsessed about that. I'm thinking I need to have a pension fund in place. I want it to be that I'm somebody that my sons can look at and go, I like what my dad does there, and I can draw inspiration from my dad. Whether they choose to or not, that's their prerogative. But I want to be that person that they can see as a good example. And that's what gives me stability. I need to keep coming back to that. And I need to keep thinking, am I the person that they look at and they can look at in years to come and go, yeah, I like what my dad does there, and I'm going to do a bit of that too. So I think that's what really gives me that stability now.
That's wicked, man. That's good. That resonates as well with me. That's why, I mean, I live for my family. That's why I do everything, really. That's why I do all of this stuff, to show them, I'm not doing fantastic things, but it's hard just to show them, you can do things, but can do things outside of the box. You can do things that are different to what the school teach you. That's why I got into karate. That's why I got into crane operating. I wrote a novel, creative writing, just to show them you don't have to just be this person that goes to work, do your 9 to 5, go home, watch your telly, watch your soaps, rinse and repeat. You can do these things. So yeah, spot on, man. I like it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of resources on growth and bettering ourselves. There's loads of books, loads of videos. I'm just wondering, do you think there's a stage in life when you think to yourself, when you start reflecting and think, yeah, I need to start bettering myself? Or do you think it's just a natural progression? Or do you think it's occurrences that happen like yourself where these bad things happen to you in the past?
I think all of those, Jim.
Yeah.
Different people. Think for different people. You say about natural progression. I think childhood and your environment around you, when you're very impressionable as a child, if that's quite well rounded, then it may be a natural progression that's already in there for you to grow, believe in yourself, do the next thing. That wasn't how I was, so it's definitely not felt anything like natural progression for me. It's been hard. It's continually, my biggest enemy is what goes on in my head, without question. Which is perhaps part of who I am, but perhaps part of the environment, that I grew up in. So, and then for some people, it's, you get to a stage in life where you think, oh, it's time to better myself. And that can happen to different people at different times in their life. For me, there was always curiosity, but I would say during my 30s, my mid-30s, I would say it was like, yeah, I mean, if I keep going the way I'm going, I'm potentially going to get to my grave and go, what have I done with my life, man? And I do fear that. I fear that. I want to be able to get into that wooden box and lie down and go, man, that was a ride. And I made absolutely the most of it, So, and I think that there are some incidents for people that then they go, it's a wake-up call. If you look at some people who recover from drug addiction, recover from maybe a period in their life where they're in and out of prison, it's never too late, but it's always your own choice. It is always your own choice. And sadly, there's some people that do allow it to get to the point where they're at their last days or even to die, and they haven't taken that opportunity to grow and do stuff for themselves. And sadly, that's often aligned with just blaming other things around you.
Yes. I think in a lot of cases, kids help. Having children helps, giving you that purpose as well. I think that it definitely helped with me anyway. But like you say, it's different for everybody. So let's talk about InspHigher then. You've mentioned it a couple of times. What is InspHigher and what does it do?
So we are, or I am, so that would be the royal we. I started InspHigher really to contribute to helping people develop in the industry and looking at ways of doing that. And it's about really disrupting a little bit as well, Jim. My little tagline is learning for leaders in lifting operations. Why? Because I and InspHigher are doing things that you don't need to do. However, if you do them, it will help you. It will help you move to that next level. So it's for those people who are looking to grow and looking to get to the next level. Now, you can look at the likes of an appointed person course, which for many people is a big challenge, okay? But the reality is it only covers so much, and sometimes people go on an AP course and then they're just left and there's nowhere else for them to go to keep learning. Also, before that point, there's not typically been a lot of information available or ways to help people get to that point that they're ready to go on an appointed person course. So they show up and it's like, I've never been any good at maths, don't know how to use a calculator really. So what InspHigher is doing and what I'm doing is giving some content out there to help people prepare themselves for moving up to the next level, and then also helping to then improve once you do some of these I see it, right, Jim, is like if you want to get from one side of the river to the other, let's say you're standing here on the side of the river and on the other side is this construction site with the cranes that you're going to manage, okay? In order to get across there, you need a bridge. Now, the accredited courses will typically give you the bridge structure. It enables you to get across, but not always necessarily easily, because you could fall through the gaps, because there's gaps in the knowledge, okay? And it might not be the easiest of crossing, and you may be continually crossing that bridge. But by the stuff that InspHigher does, it helps put a bridge deck on there, so it's a much smoother crossing. And the bits that you're struggling with, there's support there. So that's what it's all about, and that's why I'm looking to do different things. I do, of course, the advanced AP course. I've got YouTube stuff to help people prepare for the AP course. I'm looking to do a course that people can go and do as e-learning to help prepare for going on the AP course. Then looking at continual professional development. So, of course, you go on an AP course, you might not do some of it for like 6 months and then you've forgotten a load of it. So you want to have a resource that you can go back to then revisit that and remind yourself when you need it. So that's what I'm doing at InspHigher, is making it so there's much more information available for people at the time that they need it. And so it's more of a stepped progress rather than, oh man, like I need to do an AP course and I'm millions of miles away from that. Then that's the big thing. Then you become an AP and you're looking around and you're going, who's helping me now with planning lifting operations? Because I've now got a job in this company. I'm the only one that knows about lifting and I'm doing all of it, you know? So it's to give people support at each step of the way. So we have a holistically improved industry with regards to people's knowledge, competence and support.
Spot on, mate. I like it because at the end of the day, these accredited courses are great, but it's a whole world of difference when you're out in the real world, isn't it? Really, it's a whole world of difference. I'm planning on doing something similar myself with the crane operating, showing people how to drive cranes, real life situations, doing lifts, how to deal with people, lift plans, and all the rest of it. Because the course I did in Bircham, they give you the basics. You're in a controlled environment, but when you got people screaming at you and loads of noise around you and everything else, it can be quite daunting. So that's good. I like it. So do you do that is it like, do you do corporate level as well? So to companies, businesses? Yeah.
Yeah. So with the advanced AP course, which is then, of course, when you do an AP course, the sad thing is a lot of people are not getting trained some of these elements at slinger level, at supervisor level even. And then they're going on to AP, and actually some of the stuff that's kind of the basics, Jim, on just balanced symmetrical loads, things like uniform load method, things like sling length calculations, you're often on an AP course because of the time constraints and the level of knowledge people are coming in with. You come off of that course and often you're only really equipped to do balanced symmetrical loads. And then, so you got an unbalanced load, and it's like, what do I do with this? So on the advanced AP course, the reason I call it advanced is it goes beyond the standard course. That's the only reason. But it's more of the trigonometry side of things for unbalanced loads, the share of load. If you're looking at an unbalanced load, how much load have you got on each sling? That kind of thing. Wind speed calculations again, which on many AP courses, it's just touched on rather than gone into it thoroughly. Some do, I'm not taking that away for sure, but many they just touch on it, if at all. So yeah, that's, I do that for individuals. So what I'm coming up with now is e-learning, so it's accessible to individuals at any time. You can learn your own progress. But also do it for companies where I'll go in there and do it for a group of their people at the time. And that's really helpful because we do Q&A sessions, we do a lot of discussion on the topic points and make sure that they're taking away things that are actually helpful to them rather than it just being all about the set content.
Right, gotcha. So if somebody wants to do this, do you have a breakdown of what you do and what you provide, or do you have like, do they have to contact you and it's tailored to what they need? Sort of thing. And also, within the class or even the e-learning one, is it tailored to individual or are you like in a group setting?
So in the e-learning, basically the way that I'll do that is video myself talking through the lessons. There'll also be accompanying material so they can do practice exercises. Then there will be the option of having basically either group or one-to-one support. So I do have one-to-one clients as well, Jim. People who just various stages. You know, I've had people who are then going on to train appointed person, people who are then becoming APs for bigger sites, people who are just people like yourselves where you're looking to move up to the next level, and I'll do one-to-ones to help people prepare for going on AP courses. So there's a variety of options, but at the moment I'm getting my website developed. So that's a little bit clearer as to what people can do with InspHigher. With regards to companies, I get a lot of companies coming to me and saying, well, I've had this problem. Can you do something for us? They'll be like, yeah, what is it that you want to get out of it? What do you want your people to be able to do? And then we'll make sure the training is effective in order to achieve that.
Cool. Like it. Yeah, I did have a little look at your website. I like that you've got a free maths a booklet. It's a booklet where you can download, isn't it? And that's important, really, I think, because not everyone's great at maths, but you'd be surprised how much maths you need in this industry. I'll say lowly, even when I was a lowly ground worker, there was a bit of a stigma. There's a bit of a stigma anyway in the construction industry, isn't there, really? Oh, you don't need that many brain cells. But you do. You really do. So, yeah, that's good that you've got that. I haven't downloaded it.
A lot of brain cells. We've all got more brain cells than we are using. I think there are not many people that are using all of their brain cells. So I genuinely believe, Jim, that there's a very, very small percentage of the population that are actually working anywhere close to the potential. Most of the time, they've just got psychological blockers that loads of brain cells are going, that's great, I don't need to be used, so I'll just sit and chill and do nothing, you know?
Yeah, I think there's loads of factors that come into that, I think, isn't there? Confidence is one thing. Contentment, when you're content in what you're doing, you don't want to push yourself any further. But definitely confidence. If you see something and you see this big challenge and you just think, no, I can't do that, I'm not doing it. So that's kind of where you.
So how do you believe then, Jim, that people can improve their competence or confidence or increase their confidence? Because that is a big one. You know, lots of people, it's lack of confidence that holds them back. So what do you believe is the key to increasing confidence?
What, with the things that you want to do, or in general?
Yeah, things that you want to do. Yeah, in general. It can link it to in general.
Well, I think part of it goes back to the story you tell yourself, doesn't it? Part of it goes back to that, you know. I'll go back to my daughter. I help her with her maths homework, and she sees a big task. She gets all the homework and she's a massive task, and she's like, no, this is too much. This is too much. This is too much. I can't do it. And I can't do it. But you can do it. You're really good at maths. Don't look at it as a big task. Let's look at this little bit first. Do that sum there. You did it. Well done. You can do that, can't you? Yeah, I can do that actually. Right, do that one now. Done it. You can do that. So you're actually right at maths, aren't you? Yeah. So yeah, not bad. And it's repetition, isn't it? Repetition and repetition and repetition. Bit like the martial arts training, repetition, preparation, I should say, preparation. That helps a bit build confidence. Yeah. What would you say? I'm sure you seem like that you've got something lined up to say about it.
Of course, I've got my own views on it, and often I'll put across, Jim, you know, in terms of confidence. Yeah, again, we've all got our little things. I've got plenty of things that concern me and lack confidence in, but I think that I've improved my layer of general confidence, you know, over the years. But I would say that with confidence, evidence is the best way of gaining or building confidence. So if you see the results to something like you've done with your daughter, it's like you've done that. So the more time she does that, then that's building evidence. Now, sometimes you can't get evidence. So in absence of evidence, you need to have sufficient belief that something will happen. You know, and many people, it just takes a little glint of belief that'll give them enough confidence to at least try it. To then, once they try it, and if it works out that way, they've now got evidence, right? But so many people, because they're not focusing on what belief they have or what evidence they currently have, people will actually lack confidence even with belief, even with evidence, of having done something. But you've got to tap into that evidence and the level of belief in order to then just have the confidence to go forth. And for different people, of course, depending on the foundation level you're coming from, it may take more times, to build that confidence. But again, people are often focusing on the problems, the barriers to confidence, rather than the evidence and the belief that's there that will give you the confidence to do it. Like we're all kind of essentially working from, just being a human being with a brain, and it's really about what do we choose to do and where do we choose to put our focus, So evidence, I would say evidence gives confidence. In the absence of evidence, you need sufficient belief. If you don't have enough belief, you need to start doing things and researching things that's going to build your belief, that will give you sufficient belief to take action. Then taking action is going to give you some evidence. Dudes, for now.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, I think ego comes into play as well. Ego, fear of failure for a start. Let's say someone's in your class, they don't want to put any input in because they feel like they're going to look stupid with their answer, so they don't say anything. But really, we should be failing. We should be failing all the time, I think, shouldn't we? Because you don't learn otherwise. If I did a really bad podcast and it was really crap. Right, I think, what did I do wrong there? Let's do it better next time. Let's tweak this bit. Let's tweak that bit. So let's fail always. You failed before in your previous businesses, haven't you? I'm sure you've learned from that.
Oh, I'm a total fucking failure, Jim. Yeah, like my life is littered with failures. Each one of them has made me the man I am today.
Exactly.
I do not regret. Okay, if I went back and had the time again, I'd likely take actions to try to do something different. But each one of those situations that have been close to bankruptcy, a marriage breaking down, various other things, business not working out, business partnership not working out, various other things, they have all led me to who I am today, And a big thing for me, you were talking about books earlier. There's a great book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen Covey says in there, until a person can deeply and honestly say, I am who I am today because of the choices I made yesterday, that person cannot say, I choose otherwise. And that was it. I sunk that and it was like, so every fuck up, every mistake, every kind of issue that goes on in my life, I have to look at, how can I choose to do different and own that and go, right, it's going to help me become better. And I often say to people, you're bang on, like so many people are afraid of failure, man, but if you look at the people who have people look at these professional footballers and boxers and pop artists, and okay, some of the pop artists that have been thrust into the situation by others, that's a different thing. But the bands who have made it and they seem to be like an overnight success, like many will say, like, the funny thing about overnight success is it happens over years. That's a long night, and people don't see the failures. They don't see gigging in the pub toilets, They don't see the Johnny Wilkinsons standing kicking the ball over the post hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times when their mates are out drinking or out playing wherever. They don't see all that. They don't see the time that they got rejected from a rugby team or when they done a crap podcast and they still showed up on the next one. People do not always see that. That's what makes those successes. That's what makes those people be able to show up with apparently that confidence. And then they're just playing at a completely different level because they've felt what it's like to make mistakes and be criticized and fail. Those are the things that are really interesting about people. What's your biggest failure? What did you learn from that? How did it help you make you who you are today? Those are the really interesting things to see.
So when you're doing your courses, do you talk about all this sort of stuff? Do you talk about psychological aspects of the stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't help myself, Jim.
Okay, so
just shut up.
What is neuro-linguistic programming? And NLP.
So NLP is how it was started. There were two guys, Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And I believe they were both psychotherapists anyway. And back in the 70s, they kind of considered that the traditional model of psychotherapy, whether it come from Freudian or Jungian and various other modules of psychotherapy, that it seemed to be very long-winded and it wasn't always necessarily getting great results or quick results. So what they looked at is the strategies of thinking of people who were really successful in life. Okay, it might have been because they'd had that better upbringing that was a bit more supportive, or it might have been just because they'd been kicked and kicked and kicked, and they're like, no more am I being kicked. I'm doing what I need to do in order to avoid being kicked again, whatever it was. But they wanted to take those thinking strategies. So they very deeply got to understand what some really successful thinking strategies were, and reframing things. So neurolinguistic is the connection between what we say and how we think. So the stories you tell yourself, and how can we think in ways that are a little bit more helpful to what we want to achieve. Then it's actually, of course, it's programming then the brain to do that. Now, often we need people to help us do that, Jim, which sometimes it's very difficult to get out of those ruts ourselves. But sometimes just having somebody like you've done for your daughter and said, okay, let's just do this one little bit. Don't look at all of it. Let's just do this one thing right now. Wow, look at how good you are at doing that thing. Let's see how good you are at doing the next thing. Let's see how you feel once you've done that. And you're already setting up and priming in her brain that she's going to achieve that. And all of a sudden it becomes fun, it becomes easier. So it's changing the way that people think to help set yourself up more up for success. That's what NLP is all about. If we look at where it's used so broadly, Jim, it's used in sales. It can be used, it can be used really to influence people by the way that you use language and such like. And that does essentially program people's minds. There are all different techniques within NLP. In the TV world, there's people like Paul McKenna and Derren Brown who have learned from, I was very fortunate to have learned directly from Richard Bandler. And Paul McKenna and Derren Brown have both also learned from Richard Bandler. Now, if you watch some of Derren Brown's stuff, and particularly there's on Audible, there's like boot camp for the brain that he does. And then some of his stuff on YouTube, what is it like? Sacrifice and The Push. These are wonderful things where like there's about peer influence and all that, but he talks about the strategies, the techniques that he's using in order to influence people along the way. So Derren Brown is really brilliant at explaining how all this stuff works, and he's a master at doing it. You know, he says it's an illusionist, but it's not. He's just kind of using NLP techniques and looking for people who are suggestible, so they're most likely to go along with the things that he's suggesting, so he can give an extreme example of it, you know? So it's very good. If you can use it for the good, it's a really, really fantastic tool. In fact, it's not a tool, it's a way of being. You know, NLP becomes a different way of thinking. So I've just integrated that a lot into my communication and also into the training. I was looking at differentiators. How can I do training differently and better? How can I find new ways of doing training that's perhaps not getting done in this industry? And NLP was one of those things.
And it's helping. Do you see a shift now that you're using it? I mean, when did you start using this?
I became an NLP practitioner in 2017. Yeah.
Right.
And it's then I was in a bad position at that point. So I got the principles of it, but I suppose it's along the way, Jim, it's become another tool along the way. There's other things I've done, like gone and got a coaching qualification and things like that. So understood what coaching is in terms of a question-driven approach and asking people quality questions. I've also done sales closing training, which is similar to the Jordan Belfort straight line system, things like that, which have really helped. And when you look at I'm not just using it for that. I can use it across communication. Then, yeah, I mean, NLP has made a difference. And, you know,
Yeah.
some people are not going to like how I do things, Jim, and that's okay. But I do have people who come off the course and say, and I've even had, and it's hugely wonderful to hear when you've got people perhaps in their 60s who have been in the construction industry for 40 plus years, and they say things like, "This is the best course I've ever done." It's amazing. And it's like, okay, I always strive for improvement, but there's clearly things that I'm doing well. And NLP has contributed to that without doubt.
Good. It's good because I was reading up on it, and I was reading varied opinions because it's not as researched and used as much as probably something like CBT. Is it CBT therapy? I think they did introduce it to the NHS a little while back, didn't they? But there have been mixed views on it, on how successful it is. So it's good to know that it is successful for you. It really is.
Yeah, of course. And like different things will work for different people. So CBT, I would say, is a model of therapy that takes some of the elements of NLP and combines it with therapy. Now, with NLP, I have seen quick results that happen, Jim. They do on the NLP course, they do a phobia cure. There was a woman that I chatted to a couple of times that week, and she says, "Oh, I hope I don't get picked for that. You know, I hate spiders. I can't touch them. You know, how some people are with spiders." I said, "Guess what? You're going to be up there." And right enough, she ended up on the stage holding a tarantula, you know, and there was people who, they had fear of snakes. They were walking with a python around their neck. And, like the phobia cures are fairly simple processes. However, I do believe as well, Jim, like with NLP, it gives you a quick result, but if you then don't take action, consistent action that builds on that, you may go back to your default position, you know? So it does require ongoing work from there. It's not like, you know, and it will help people stop smoking like that. But if you don't then change the person you are, that your identity, the way you're being is more around being a non-smoker rather than doing the same stuff as you've done as a smoker, you'll probably go back to it. You know, that's where people could say, "Oh, NLP doesn't work." NLP does work, but you need to do the work too.
So that's what I was about to say. So that's something you can maintain yourself. Yeah, it's not like you have to go see somebody to keep giving you these tools. So you give people these tools, and they can go away and they can keep maintaining that and continuing it throughout their life. Yeah.
I would say what NLP does, Jim, is it often gives a snapshot, and it gives you a moment, a period of time where you can see how life or how you can be with this different way of thinking. Yeah, but then you need to then, like you say, you need to be taking the actions. You go, okay, I am now going to maintain this different way of thinking. It's up to me. It's my responsibility to, whether it be surround myself with people, take actions, change my habits, change my routines to ensure that this is the new way I am. In anything, Jim, you know how it is, mate, that like it's not about what you want to achieve. It's more important to look at who is the person that I need to be in order to achieve that. That's where the hard work is done. So yeah, NLP gives you that snapshot. It gives you that opportunity to come out of what you were in and see something different. It's then up to you to then take the actions and the processes in order to keep that up.
Got it. Wicked. Nice one. Well, Kev, as we're talking about psychology, I want to touch on mental health because I don't know about you. Have you seen something happening recently with mental health in the construction industry? Suicide rates rising. I don't know if it's because I want to get into this, helping people and create awareness of it more. I don't know if it's the algorithm that's feeding me the information more. I'm seeing it more, or if it is the case. But it seems to me that suicide rates are rising in construction, both in UK and in the US. I'm seeing it a lot in the US. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the reality would be the stats, you know, and I mean, I don't know the stats, Jim, but it's certainly something that I've looked at as well. You know, it's too much for today, but I've been in those places myself, Jim, you know?
Yeah, same.
I've lived with, like, my partner really kind of cannot get her head around this because I think it's alarming to people. and I've touched on this in posts. I try not to go into it on posts or anything like that. But I've had, I don't know, frequent thoughts and fantasizing about suicide, Jim. And to me, I've just learned to live with it. I think, and sometimes the only reason, this is real deep stuff, and I really don't want people to kind of feel upset or whatever by this, but you feel what you feel, you know? That at times it's just perhaps I feel that I've just not had the courage to go through with it, that I'm afraid of how that looks. My mind is a very, very difficult place. It's like, sometimes I say jokingly to people, right? You only need to put up with me for a couple of hours. Think yourself lucky. This brain is with me 24 hours a day, you know? And so I can kind of resonate with some people, and I can only assume in some cases what some people are going through, what has actually led to taking that action. I think there's an element of despair there. I don't know the stats, but I've cared about it for some years, Jim, and I've cared on trying to kind of have an impact on that. And sometimes just giving people hope, giving people, again, not getting caught up in that identity on, that's who I am, I'm defined by my mistakes, I keep making the same mistakes, so that's all the way it's always going to be, and trying to help people get out of that. So I don't know the stats. I suppose to really know whether the problem is increasing, it would be to look at how many are there per 100,000 people, So it's an accurate insight to the data. What I do think, Jim, is that the mental health problem that we're seeing, and where it's become a bit of a buzzword, so there is an element of that. So more people are talking. I think we've always had mental health, right? There's always people who have had challenges they've had to deal with in their mind and all the rest of it. We've got really, really complex thing. This thing in our head, right? The psychologists don't understand it fully. We don't understand it. And I believe it's because it continues to evolve faster than we can get to grips with it. The human brain is an incredibly intelligent thing. And a lot of that evolving goes on outside of our conscious mind. It goes on in the unconscious mind. Now, I think also one of the big problems we've got, Jim, is so many people are overwhelmed. There's so much noise going on. There's so many things taking people's attention. There's so many things that people are sadly taking messages on board of, I need to be this, I need to be that. And of course, people can be who they want to be, but people are getting sucked into, look at how many women are getting their lips done now, and they're already beautiful, man. There's beautiful women who look great and they look naturally great, and they're going and getting lips done and wearing certain clothes, maybe because of societal pressures. And the only reason that I can say that is because I've had women tell me that, It's not my perception, it's the feedback from other people. So that's just one example, but people are, I think, more than ever, because of social media and because of the amount of stuff that's out there, they're getting pulled in different directions. And sadly, some young people, they don't know where to turn. They don't know who to listen to. They don't know what they need to be. And it's a very difficult world, and even harder for parents to help their children feel as though they are enough as they are. And they just inform themselves from within. Okay, listen a little bit to the outside, but you've got to be largely self-informed. And I think that's where a lot of the problems are coming from, Jim. Social media is not the problem. It's the use of social media. There's this horrendous element of narcissism that's going on social media. There's this kind of thing of people feel that they are important enough that other people really want to hear everything about them, and they are the most important thing. I've tried to tell myself, going back 2 or 3 years ago now, I came off of Instagram, I came off of Facebook. I've gone back onto Facebook for a specific reason, because there's a business group I'm in and they do lives in there. I'm not putting anything on my profile, whatever, but I came off of Instagram because I thought, why am I doing it? And I had to be honest with myself, Jim, and I had to go, I'm doing it for validation. And that's not who I want to be. So I'm coming off of there because I want to be the person that doesn't need the validation. I'm largely self-directed. And it took me coming off it. People have a healthier relationship, but some of the stuff, I mean, when I look on Facebook, man, it's like you are worrying about some seriously low-level shit, and you are getting anxious about it and angry about it. Do yourself a favor and give yourself bigger things to worry about, things that you're striving for more and building yourself as a person, rather than your days getting broken by this interaction. It's nuts. And I feel really sad for people who are getting sucked into that. And it's not only that, even if you try to avoid it, then there's still that thing of, oh yeah, but do I need to know? Is there something there that I need to know about? And yeah, minds are just pulled in all different directions. I think that's a big factor, Jim.
It really is. It really is one of the major factors. It's interesting you say that about the noise. I wrote an article saying, what was it? Creating peace to slow the world down. The thumbnail's me just going like, shh, because of all these distractions. I don't believe in Facebook at all. I've never had it. I've recently looked into getting it purely for what I'm doing to promote it and that sort of stuff. But even something was holding me back, and I've tried to create an account and it's not let me twice. So that's a sign. But particularly with the crane industry, there's can be quite a hostile environment, I think, within crane groups. I think there's lever pullers and whatever else. So I don't really want to get sucked into that. But you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot of other factors involved. Maybe the economy. The economy's not great at the moment, is it? People are struggling for money.
Yes.
The wages are not going up with it to meet inflation. So I think that's a big aspect. I don't know if there's more stress at work. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely something that needs addressing. And people need to start talking about it more.
Yeah.
It is a buzzword in a sense, but it is real. I mean, there are more suicides in the construction industry than in any other industry. It's been like that for years consecutively. Yeah, so it is. But I mean, like yourself, I felt it. I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain my wife saved my life 20 odd years ago when I met her. Giving me that purpose and showing me a way to love myself. Yeah, so. But like I say, that's for another time. You can go.
Yeah, even saying that, Jim. Yeah, I mean, it's good to even say that and to use those words. Many people, when you talk like that, you see the discomfort in a lot of blokes. Learn to love myself, and you can see people recoiling from it. But until you've been there and been through that process and you embrace that, then often you're uncomfortable with it. Yeah, I mean, I fucking hated who I was, Jim. I had darkness within my mind about parts of my life. Like utter darkness. I had toxic shame about how I was as a kid. So much stuff, and then it was a process to learn to love who I am. It's an ongoing process, right? But a lot of people are really, really uncomfortable with that. But it is important. It's important I think that's one of our jobs as strong men, is to kind of really show people what it is to build strength. And some of that is, okay, you don't need to be like, it's not about drop into your emotions every moment and, I'm feeling weepy, so I'm just going to weep. It's not about that. It's about like having some kind of regulation on that without trying to control it and stack it away. It's going, yes, at the moment, I'm feeling pretty upset. However, I do need to put that to one side because I've got to do this at the moment. However, I'm going to revisit that and I'm going to explore why I felt upset and understand that and be okay with myself that I felt upset about something, And speaking, and I'm sure you've had some fairly tough experiences as well, Jim. I don't doubt that. And I come from I've been in some of the most macho environments on the go. The crane industry itself can be, being a paratrooper, like. Ant Middleton was in my squadron. He wrote about pretty poorly. I didn't like what he wrote, and I felt at times mate, the moment you realise that this was actually part of becoming who you are, then it'll be a game changer for you. And he's done well in things, but from the outside view, still struggling with a lot, But it was a very tough macho environment. But I can now sit here and I believe that I can continue to grow emotionally, and I can help other men do that too. And it's about giving the space without judgment, but also going, right, there's a moment to do that, and what we're going to do is we're going to sit down and explore that, but there's also a moment to go, it's time to get shit done as well, and understanding when to do that. And we can certainly do that for other men, without doubt.
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, it's good that we're talking about it now. Like you say, people struggle with talking about it. People recoil. Actually, I did a video the other day. It wasn't a very good video. I think I should have done it better, but I watched something where, a lady, that was another TEDx talk actually. A lady was talking about, she was sending a message to women, help your men speak about their problems, because they do sometimes, they see, you can see men that you've got to be strong, you have to provide, but if they're vulnerable, allow them to be vulnerable, help them talk about it, listen to them when they have problems. Obviously, women have problems as well. I don't dispute that, because I only know being a man, so I can't speak for women. So don't let it be a taboo for a man to feel that way. So that was my message to women. Whether they listen or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on about this for ages, Jim, but it's a really important thing. And the sad situation is that, as much as I suppose we would maybe expect that when we're around women that we're going to be a little bit more okay to express our feelings, but the reality is, some of my experiences, Jim, I think particularly when there's women that are close to you and they're relying on you being strong, and
that's what I'm talking about.
They're relying on you being decisive and taking the lead, which is a very masculine thing, Then, as much as there may be encouragement for you to open up, you can see a change. You can see a change in the way they're approaching you if you become too vulnerable. So I think that's where it's important that we can look at other men and draw inspiration and maybe chat between men, and then be able to share those moments and go, right, guys, it's great that we've been able to explore that in a situation where not without judgment. But then the real marker is now we're going to go back in the world and we're going to show up and we're going to get shit done, And we're going to be there. We're going to be the strong person for those around us. But we need to know that there's somewhere to go when we're having our moment as well, And sometimes that place to go is not the person that relies on us being strong, That's the sad reality I've found. So I've learned to go, okay, there needs to be other outlets rather than me continually emoting to whether it be my partner or whoever else, because they are relying on me to be a certain way.
Yeah, I get that. But Kev, I'm not going to keep you too much longer.
I think it's me keeping you, Jim.
No, honestly, it's great. I love it. It's great. I normally finish on some quickfire questions, but I just want to ask you one last question before the quickfire questions. What are people's common misconceptions about you, do you think?
What a great question, Jim. It's very difficult to answer that because I don't know if there are actually misconceptions. I'll be honest, Jim. I often wrestle with whether I'm a bit of an arsehole at times. I do, and I'm sure there'll be many people who say, well, yeah, you are a bit of an arsehole, Kev. So, but I think sometimes, of course, as you said, I'm 6'7", ex-paratrooper, Scottish, which comes across as quite blunt and dry at times. We have a different approach to things. I've noticed huge cultural differences between English and Scottish. They're there, they exist. We can be very, as Scots, we can be very straight to the point and blunt, and just that's how it is, rather than being a little bit more concealed about it. So there's all those things. So sometimes I think that can be a little bit full on, and sometimes people then just see that's me, is who I am. I'm just, somebody that I want it a certain way and blah, blah, blah. But if you kind of take the time to get behind that, you get a very different being as what you may be initially seen on the front, you know. If I care about you and I feel that you're open to exploring things, then I have so much time and so much want to kind of go down this exploration of broad thinking and understanding how we can improve things. And I think maybe a misconception sometimes, Jim, is on the outset, people just see me as that I want it a certain way, and that's the way it's got to be. Whereas they're just actually getting blinded by the fact that I'm a big, strong, deep-spoken guy, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm quite assertive. I can be quite assertive and to the point at times as well.
Well, I think you have to be to succeed anyway. You do have to be. You have to be successful at anything. I think you have to be assertive. You have to have a certain level of arrogance. You look at these top elite sports people, they have to have that certain level of arrogance and real self-confidence and assertiveness. But we all have layers to our own, don't we? So when you start peeling these layers off, you find different things. And you've shown that today. I mean, we've spoken about a wide variety of things. So, yeah, you say that you can speak about a broad spectrum of stuff that can make people think. So you're all right. You're not a bad lad.
There's a fine line as well, Jim, between confidence and arrogance, isn't there? And definitely I've been guilty of crossing over that line, and then sometimes you often get humbled. You know, there's something that comes along to humble you and take back over, but it's important not to allow it to take you back too far. They keep hovering around that line, that fine line between confidence and arrogance.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're not an arsehole, mate. You're all right.
Ah, thank you.
Let's go to these quickfire questions. There's not many. Just don't think about it too much. Just a bit of fun. Answer as best you can. Right. Childhood heroes.
Oh, it was probably people like, actually, quite sadly, people like The Undertaker and Jake the Snake Roberts.
Okay. Yeah.
I was well into the American professional wrestling.
Yeah,
so,
same.
Yeah, just the physical stature of the likes of The Undertaker and Bret Hitman Hart. I loved him as well. And these were people that were just getting on, like the excellence of execution of Bret Hart and the way he done things. And once he got into this mode, and like the resilience of The Undertaker, he got smacked up and he'd be lying there and he'd just sit up, and like, of course, that a lot of that was staged, but they did actually, even MMA people will say that American professional wrestlers put their bodies through the hardest time,
Absolutely.
Jake the Snake Roberts, I mean, even now, I don't know if anybody's heard, who's listening, or if you've heard, Jim, his podcast with Joe Rogan, and there's the documentary, The Resurrection of Jake the Snake, and man, that guy has been through some serious shit, man. And I could really resonate with some of the stuff that was going on in his head. But childhood heroes, I would say first ones come to mind, American wrestlers.
Okay. Yeah, my man was the Ultimate Warrior. He was my guy with the wrestling, Have you ever been kicked in the nut?
Yes, I've been kicked in the nuts. Same. Yeah, a competition, yeah.
How are you with authoritative figures?
My first thing is probably likely to rebel against them, but I've learned to actually take the time to not just immediately do that and listen to what they've got to say, so I can more accurately evaluate, but typically not brilliant.
Good man. All right. Well, I could see that from your opening sentences anyway. Indian food or Chinese food?
Indian.
British Paras or US 82nd Airborne Division?
Oh, God. British Paras every day.
All day long, yeah? Okay.
All day long, yeah.
There
was something they said. They said something about, I can't remember exactly, and I'll be totally misquoting it, but they said, like, about British Paras, they were like, how can it be that there's people who slay each other so much and give each other so much of a hard time. You know, these people, you wouldn't want to hear somebody talking of somebody else in the way that they do about each other, but it feeds into them being people that you would rely on most to have your back, you know, and that's how they kind of viewed British paratroopers.
So how you speak to each other, basically, it was terrible.
Yeah, like we'd absolutely rip each other apart, man. You know, totally rip each other apart and give each other like a mega hard time. But it was all in like, you knew that guy standing next to you. If the shit hit the fan, he would. Yeah,
good. Yeah. Okay, teaching or learning?
Whoa. Of course, I teach a lot, but learning is the key to life, man. Yeah, learning. Yeah. If you don't do one or the other, learning.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to teach to learn. Sometimes that's the best way of learning. Yeah.
Job, man. That's how I earn my living.
Yeah. Pet hates.
I've got a few. Is there any coming to mind? Pet hates. Nissan Micros, that's one of them.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I just think that I don't know what happens to people with Nissan Micro, but I think that life would be better without Nissan Micros. And one of the life hacks is whatever you can do, whatever you need to do to avoid being stuck behind a Nissan Micro.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I think we kind of answered this one. So you're viewing it. Do you view failure in a positive or negative way?
It feels utter shit, but it's essentially a positive thing in life.
Good, yeah. Any regrets? Last one. Any regrets?
I think I have one that often plays back is when we got into a fight one time when I was in the Paras. I wasn't quick to go and help out as quick as I should have been going and helping out, and I often think, like, that's not who I am. I should have dived in that situation quicker. Yeah. So if I could live that again, I would have got filled in, but I would have jumped in. There were other times that I was quick to help out, but one time stinks out. That's one of my regrets. Other than that, there's things that I would go back and do better, but don't really regret. So they've just happened to be who I am.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, that's fair enough. So, good man. That wraps that up then. So, thank you very much. All I'll say now is we are done, but how can people reach you? How can they find you and what you do, your InspHigher and everything? I know you say you're not on Instagram, but how can people reach you?
Best ways, Jim, is LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect and converse on LinkedIn. YouTube channel, InspHigher, is just the YouTube channel, which is InspHigher. So it's like then the word higher, getting higher. So the YouTube channel, and on the website, inspihigher.co.uk. Currently building that at the moment. It's where the e-learning platform is going to live. It's where the membership platform is going to live. And as you say, there's a couple of free resources on there, and of course links to the YouTube channel. And you can buy my little pocketbooks, which are waterproof as well, on there. You can buy them on the website, which has a lot of quick access to the calculations that are helpful in lifting operations, and it won't get damaged by the rain. You can use it on site.
Wicked, nice one. Yeah, I will put the if people are watching this on YouTube, I will put the links in description where to get hold of you to make that useful for them. So that's us, mate. That's us done. You can go about your day now, having your dinner or whatever it is you're going to do. Thanks very much, mate. This has been brilliant. It's been really, really good. I enjoyed this thoroughly.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much, Jim. And we'll be sure to keep in touch. And thank you to everybody who takes the time out to watch to the end. Fair play. Well done.
Nice one. No, I'm sure they'll love it. Apparently, you're quite the legend in the crane industry, so I'm sure they'll love it. So
that's nice to hear. Yeah.
All right, that's
cool.
It. Cheers,
Jim. Thanks, mate. All the best.
You too. Bye, mate.